So today I have the pleasure of speaking with Mike Jones. Mike, please go ahead and introduce yourself and your company to our community.
Hi Claire, thank you for inviting me on. Yeah, my name is Mike Jones, very unique name. So as I was saying, very easy to find me on social media because obviously there's not many Mike Joneses about. And I've got a company called Better Happy. And at its core, Better Happy is a management development and business consultancy. And our vision at Better Happy, our big kind of focus, our big reason for being is we believe that for most people, work comes as a negative to their health and to their happiness, and it shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't need to be that way. So our vision is every employee happy, every business thriving, and our kind of core services are developing managers, developing leaders, and putting systems in place to make sure that work is a positive place where people get results, where the business grows without people having to sacrifice their health, their personal lives, and their work-life balance.
I love it. And for how long have you been doing that, Mike?
Well, I started with a partner in 2018 on a kind of ad hoc basis because this is my second business. I did have my first business was a functional fitness training facility, which is a fancy word for saying a gym, in Droitwich. And when I had that, one of my clients did a lot of team building stuff through one of his businesses, and he was getting lots of requests for well-being focused events. So I started doing it with him in 2018, but that was kind of just we'll take workshops when they come up and we just talk about well-being. And then as COVID came along, the gym had been going for 5 years. I decided that I wanted to pivot more towards the Better Happy stuff and pivot away from the gym. So I sold the gym and kind of went full steam into Better Happy in 2020, which is when COVID came around. I think 2020 feels like yesterday.
Absolutely. And you mentioned COVID there, but a lot of positive, although it was kind of a negative or seen as a negative time, a lot of positive things came out the other side. I think people were more connected on a personal level to their own well-being, and how work impacted their lives, because there was a time there where we couldn't work in some sectors, and there was a lot of reflection. So what would you say then was one of your best outcomes during that time?
For me, COVID, like it did with many people, gave me a lot of time to think and reevaluate and, take that time to look at the big picture. And for me, I used that time to think about where I was at, where I was going with the business that I was spending most of my time in the gym, and what my values were, what my vision was, and how aligned all of that was. And that time and reflection brought me to the conclusion that although I loved my first business, and I'm obviously sad that I don't do it anymore because there's lots of benefits of owning a gym, I came to the conclusion that ultimately my vision and my values were much more aligned with what I want to do with Better Happy. So it really helped me shift to something that's more aligned to my personal values, but it also helped me recognize how badly I burnt myself out in my first business, and turn that into a positive by recognizing it and being able to step away from it, look at it, and being able to think about how to go about things differently with my second business so that I didn't experience that.
Yeah, that's massive. Thank you for sharing that. What would you say perhaps some of the challenges were at the beginning, sort of that pivotal moment, that transition from one business to another?
Well, you're starting again. I think anybody that's either got or toying around with a business realize that it's not easy, and if it was easy, everybody would do it. And I think it's easy to argue that the first 1 to 5 years are the hardest, because unless you've got lots of capital investment and a lot of business experience or a lot of business support, you have to rely on a level of just messy graft to get your thing off the ground. And people talk about work-life balance, so do I. It's literally what we talk about in our business. It's one of the services that we sell. But the truth is, if you want to start something new or you want to achieve something, it's going to take a colossal amount of effort. So it kind of felt like starting again. You know, I had a team at my old business that was back to Mike. I had systems in place and pricing models. All of that was in place. We had a defined market, and we had them regularly coming in. So all of that kind of stuff that maybe you take for granted was in place over 3 to 4 years of kind of hard work. And I consciously understood that I was taking 5 steps back in order to be able to take 10 steps forwards.
You mentioned there about having a foundation in your previous business that you had spent a lot of time and effort and energy in producing and putting in place.
Excuse me, sorry.
But clearly there wasn't anything lost there, in that it benefited you moving forward. So what do you think some of the things were that you adopted from your old business moving into your new?
Being more business minded. I think a lot of people, there are some people that get into business because they love business. They love the concept of business. They love the putting the systems in place, making the stuff work, seeing an idea to, you know, solving a problem with profits. There are some people that love the actual business aspect of business, so they take to it very well. But I think a very large amount of people, a very significant percentage of people that get into business because they're passionate about something, and the business side of it is the stuff that's not very attractive to them and that they don't even think about, and they just have to deal with when they feel like they have to. So I certainly made that, I'm not going to say it's a mistake, I went through that learning curve with my first business. So with business number 2, Better Happy, my passion is just to go out and talk about it and get it out there as much as possible and develop it and get people on board. But I'm much more disciplined now in putting regular focus into the business side of it, because that piece has to work. And if that piece doesn't work, eventually you do get burnt out and fed up because the systems aren't in place, the structure's not in place, you're not getting paid properly. And no matter how passionate you are about it, it becomes a negative. So that's probably the biggest positive that I've taken from my experience at the gym.
Yeah, that precious time, that focus time on and not just in is massive. And you're right, you know, it's you may not have got everything 100% right at the beginning, but it's just a learning curve. This is a journey, and it's really good to hear. I can feel that passion and that enthusiasm for what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that. I'd like to ask you, what most inspired you to do what you're doing now?
It's a kind of, it's a story, really. It's an evolution of a story. So when I was young, I always felt out of place at school. Just by being myself, I was very active. I had lots of ideas. I didn't like the whole ethos of just take this information, remember it and regurgitate it. So I just didn't like it. So I was kind of labeled as naughty, made to feel like there was something wrong with me for being that way. So I didn't feel happy coming out of school. It kind of negatively impacted my self-esteem and my self-confidence. Then I went into my first career, which was the military, and very similar thing, you know, probably the worst career to go into if you don't get on with the schooling system. So, but there were things that appealed to me in the military, you know, the being active, the life experiences, the general kind of ethos of being in the military. So there were lots of appeals, but again, there was a few managers that I didn't get on with very well and got kind of labeled as being a problem child, and again had a big knock on my self-esteem. So I didn't realize it, but those experiences were starting to teach me that if you're not in the right environment and you don't create the right environment, you're not going to thrive, you're going to be unhappy. And what I did was I came out of the army after doing 2 back-to-back tours of Afghan, and I went traveling to Southeast Asia, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. I wasn't sure about how to be happy in life. You know, I wasn't depressed, but I was kind of like, my life's pretty good. It's good compared to many other people. You know, I'm lucky enough to be born into a developed, safe and wealthy country. I've got the opportunity to travel. I've had the opportunity to change my career. So I knew how good my life was in comparison to many others, but I still felt a bit like something was missing. And I remember having this dialogue, you know, am I just a bit miserable? Do I just not appreciate life? And then I saw a book called The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama. So I was like, well, that seems apt. So I read that book, and that basically gave me a whole new philosophy on life that I'd never heard before. I was about 25 at the time. So I read that book, and it completely changed my outlook on what life is and what life's about and how to go about living your life. And essentially before that, I'd learned from Western society that life is about getting a career, getting yourself established, buying a house, potentially, having a family or a romantic partner, and saving and going on holiday once a year. But obviously I had a lot of that in the army, and it didn't really work for me. And so I felt lost. But then when I read The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama, my philosophy completely changed, because it resonated with me very deeply. That led me to this new understanding that actually the meaning of life is to be happy. And the way that we be happy isn't by acquiring more stuff or status or fame, but actually by being the best version of ourselves and making as much positive impact as we can to other people or to other things. And I was like, but it's explained in a very logical way, not in a nice kind of religious way, but you should do this because it will make you feel better. And so I read it and I really resonated with it, and lots of other things in there as well about if you're holding on to negative emotions because people have done wrong by you, that's actually only affecting you, not them. So lots of really good psychology. And I was like, wow, why didn't I learn this in school? So from that moment on, my life just took a massive U-turn. I stopped drinking. I used to get myself into trouble through drinking a lot, probably linked to low self-esteem. I used to do other things that I'm not particularly proud of. So all of those behaviors basically disappeared or significantly reduced. I started focusing on being a good person. I started volunteering. And then eventually when I came back to the UK, I decided that I wanted to use the opportunities that I have to make a positive difference in the world. And I came to the conclusion the best way to do that was through business. So that's how I got there.
What an amazing journey, and a journey of self-exploration as well. But no, I absolutely love that book. So I recommend reading it for anybody watching this interview as well. What would you therefore say one of your biggest successes have been?
In life in general, or business, or?
However, whichever one means the most to you.
I think my biggest success has been in life in general, and I suppose this is the message that I try to put across through what we do at Better Happy, is to have been nurtured in an environment that was trying to tell me there was something wrong with me and that I needed to change as a person in order to fit in. And somehow I've managed to, probably through my stubbornness, find a way not to let that environment change me to a point where I would fit by being happy, and actually find a way to thrive. I think that's my biggest win. And I'm sure there's many factors that have contributed to that aren't just Mike, such as the people I've been around and the opportunities that I've had. But that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about, because what I see on a national scale in the UK is actually the environment by and large is what we've got a lot of choice in our environment, but it encourages poor health. It encourages doing work that doesn't excite you in the slightest, so that you can buy things, so you can have more money to pay for the things that you don't want, to make up for the fact that you're unhappy. And I think we live in an environment that generally encourages that. And it takes effort and stubbornness to stop that being a reality. And I think that's probably what I'm proudest of, that I didn't just go with the flow and do what I was told and live a life that felt bleh, and somehow found my way to Eastern philosophy, living on monasteries, learning about the mind, and trying to make good use of my time here on this planet.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. We haven't ventured into your now clients as the company that you are now, Better Happy. Who would you say, or what type of company or person is your best customer? So
typically the businesses we work with will have a senior leadership / management team of at least 10 people, because that's who we tend to work with. But that's ranged. We've worked with small local charities with less than 10 staff. We've worked with accountants with less than 10 staff. We've worked with charities with 200 staff, hospitality, family-owned hospitality businesses with 200 staff, all the way up to large corporates with 10,000 plus staff. So I think the key thing across them is the business wants to become a happy place to work. They want to be a place that's got great staff, a great team, and achieve great things. And they know that they've got to look after and develop their people to do that. And they've got normally, a decent sized senior leadership team. Sometimes in the small business, it's that the case is they are all the senior leadership team because they're a small business. So it still kind of works in that way. But it's a business where they're focused on their people, and they know that in order to grow and lead their industry, they need people that actually want to work for them and want to be there.
Fantastic. And finally, looking at your journey, you've had a couple of journeys, and you've obviously started, established a business, and then changed and started to establish another business. But looking back on your journey, what 3 words would you choose that best sums it up?
The business journey.
Your journey.
Ooh. Exciting, challenging, and meaningful.
Fantastic. Mike, I really appreciate you joining me today. It's been amazing speaking with you and hearing about your journey. Thank you for sharing, and to your future success. Good luck.
Thank you, Claire. Thanks for having me.